Boker Tov. We are going to start. Today's Daf Yomi is Kesubos Ayin Tes Kesubos 79. We're going to start on the bottom of Ayin Ches Amud Beis, the bottom of 78b. Hahi Isisa. There was a woman debated Tabrichinu that she wanted to hide her assets from her husband. She was getting married. It was a widow. She was coming to get married, and she didn't want her husband to have control over all her previous assets. So what did she do? So she wrote off her assets to her daughter in Siva Igrisha. And then when she wrote off her assets, so Rashi tells us that what she did was she gave them to her daughter in front of witnesses. And she told the witnesses that this is not a valid gift. So meaning to say, she was saying this is not a real gift, but she wrote it as a gift. So her husband thought it was a gift that she'd given already to her daughter. But then she got married and she got divorced. So basically, has his contract, whether or not the gift that she gave to her daughter was a valid contract, even though she wrote a contract to her daughter with the assets. Top of Ayin Testament Aleph, also coming to Rav Nachman, when the daughter came in front of Rav Nachman and says, I want to get the mother, the widow, came to Rav Nachman and she made a claim against her daughter that she has to return the asset. So Kari Rav Nachman ripped up the contract. He said it was a fake gift. She gets her property back. So Azor Ravanan coming to Marokfa, so Ravanan came to Marokfa. Amalei, look, is it him? Chazimar Nachman. Oh, hold on 1 second. Hold on, just give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. Chazimar Nachman. So he said, so Ravanan said in front of Ravanan said to Marokfa, look what Mar Nachman, they didn't even call him Rav Nachman. He said, call him Mr. Nachman. Chakwa, look at him, he's such like a day laborer. He's tearing up these garments that belong to people. It's a terrible thing that he's doing. So look what he's doing. This daughter had a contract that the land was hers, and he just tore it up. So Marokfa says to Rabbanan, tell me then, we had this word in the Gemara already. Tell me then exactly what happened. So he says, this is what happened. So he says, oh, what are you talking about here? That it's a shtarm of rechas? You're talking about it wasn't a real contract. She was just trying to hide her assets from her husband. That's actually okay. Shtarm of rechas kamers. That he said, said that Shmuel said that I was given permission to give halachos. It's an unusual expression in the Shas. I don't remember offhand where we saw such an expression coming from Shmuel. He was Mora Hara. Shmuel didn't have smicha, so I guess he needed explicit permission, even though he wasn't ordained. He said, he said, if such a contract will come into my hand, I'll rip it up because it's not a valid contract. And that's what Rav Nachman was relying upon. So Marokfa said to Rav Nachman did the right thing. So Rabba said back to Rav Nachman, actually, I'm not sure if you did the right thing. Rav Nachman, time of mind, what's the reason why Shmuel said you tear up a shtar of rechas? Well, because the person is not going to give away all his money or give away his money and give it to somebody else. But that only applies if it's to a real other person, a third party. But to his own daughter, Yahiva, a person would give his money away to his daughter. And I feel nevertheless, so nevertheless, the Gemara says, we reject what Rabba said. That even when it's your daughter, you still prefer yourself. That's what the Gemara responds to Rabba. Meisvei, Gemara challenges Shmuel's idea that you could rip up a shtar of rechas. Because we say, somebody wants to hide their assets from their husband. Kate Sadiosa, what does she do if she wants to hide the assets from her husband? She writes a shtar pasim to other people. Rashi says it's not a real contract, it's a shtar piusim, an appeasement contract. You convince somebody, you accept this gift. And he says, you accept this gift prior to our marriage, so my husband doesn't have any rights to it. But I don't want you to really have it. So it's basically the same thing as the shtar mavrachas. That's what Rashbag says. Rashbag says you could write a shtar pasim. Say no, if you write a shtar pasim, the person could actually claim it, and the joke's on you, and that person who you write it to could say, well, it's actually mine. So you have to actually be careful how you word it. Well, you have to make sure that you write it. From today onward, from today from today and onward, meaning to say that the contract only takes effect the day I say it takes effect. So only if my husband comes along and says, I want that property, then you can say, well, actually, I had given it retroactively from that date. But you need to utter that phrase, so that way you protect yourself. It's more insurance against the person saying, well, it's mine. No, it was only yours if I said it was yours. So the Gemara says, the reason why this dharma, the reason why he can't claim it is because you actually wrote that in the contract. But if you wouldn't have written those words in, then indeed the purchaser has bought it. So it's a question on Shmuel. So I'm Rabbi Zera Kasha. Rabbi Zera says not difficult. Depends how much of your property you gave away. If you gave away all of your property, then indeed Shmuel is correct that you could just rip it up because nobody gives away all their property. But if they gave away some of it, then Shmuel's position doesn't apply there, because you really do give away gifts sometime, and so therefore you could say I gave away a portion. So the Gemara asks the fundamental question: well, if she goes in front of Rav Nachman, and the Rav Nachman says, okay, you didn't get it, well then who does own it? Then the husband owns it. So give the husband the fruits, give the husband the property. So if the purchaser didn't buy it, then the husband should have got it. No, we're going to say the husband doesn't have any claim to it, because we make it like the Mishnah says, that if the husband doesn't know about the assets, then he doesn't have a claim to them. He signed off, so to speak, when he waived his rights implicitly. That's following the position of Rabbi Shimon, who drew a distinction between assets the husband knows about and assets he doesn't know about. And that's what the Gemara is saying, that since the husband thought that the assets were given away, he waived his claims to it. So now we go up to the next Mishnah. Remember, we were talking about Nechse Milug. So the property that the woman takes into the marriage that she gets to keep, that she designates as Milug property, she keeps the principal, but the husband eats the fruits. But what if it's a case where the principal will be depleted? So let's say, for example, Nafula Kasafim, let's say she received money like cash. So therefore, how do you turn that into something that gives off fruits? I guess they didn't have bonds back then. You couldn't buy a bond. So what do? You purchase real estate, and then she keeps the real estate and the husband gets the fruits. Let's say peros atulushim and akarka. Let's say it's fruits that were removed from the ground. So she got in the middle of their marriage, let's say a bushel of apples, or like a lot of apples. So what should she do with them? You take these fruits that have been removed from the ground, purchase real estate, and then he eats the fruits of that real estate. Let's say she receives land, and on that land there are fruits growing on it already. We established kama yafa beperos, kama yafa below peros. How much is the land worth with the fruits on it, and how much is it worth without these fruits? So then we see the value of these fruits that are growing. Umosar, you take that difference, you purchase real estate with it, and the husband eats the fruits of those of that land that you bought. But whereas the Chachamim argue with Rabbi Meir, the Chachamim say that if it's still, even though it's still attached to the ground, it's still fruit that's growing. And so therefore that's going to be considered the husband's, and he gets all those fruits that were attached to the ground. But the fruits that were no longer attached to the ground when they fell to her, that's hers. And he purchases real estate and he eats the fruits of that property. Rabbi Shimon says, Malcolm, we're going to say what's the difference between Rabbi Shimon and the Tanakami here. Malcolm sheyafa kocha b'knisa, so where he has more strength when the marriage comes in, i.e., to see those fruits that are attached to the ground as still being basically on the ground, and therefore he gets to, when they mature, he gets to take them. So Rabbi Shimon says, Malcolm sheyafa kocha b'knisa, so ora kocha b'tziaso. At the same time, since they're still basically attached to the ground, so therefore when she leaves, she takes those fruits with her because they're not yet his fruits yet, they're still attached to the ground. But where he has less strength when he leaves, i.e., the fruits have been removed from the ground, and they're lying there on the ground. We're going to say, well, on the way out, he gets them because they're already detached from the ground. The fruits that are attached to the ground, when they come into the marriage, he gets them. He says they're going to grow, they're going to be mine. When he leaves, when she leaves, it's hers. And the fruits that are attached, that are removed from the ground, they're detached from the ground, they're hers going into the marriage. But when they leave the marriage, it'll be his because they've already been removed from the ground. Zak the Gemara says the Gemara says the following. Pshita, it's so obvious that Aro Beta, that if you have a choice to buy, what do you have to buy? If you have money, you have to purchase real estate with it. And so let's say one of the parties wants to buy a house and one wants to buy land. Aro Bate, land or a house. Aro, you buy the land, that's more secure. Bate Vidikle, let's say you have versus a house. Let's say you have a house and you also have a palm tree, Bate, better off with the house. Dikli Veilani. I guess you're going to go with the more secure investment. Obviously, if one is going to make more money, you would think that you go with the one that makes more money. You go with the more secure investment. So that says the Gemara, Dikli Veilani, if you have a choice between a palm tree and just regular trees, Dikli. Ilani Vigufni, trees and grapevines, Ilani, go to trees. So now let's say you have a choice between Abba Zardata Upera de Capri. So let's say, what is Abba Zardata Upera de Capri? So Abba is a forest, Zardata is these types of trees that don't have really good fruits to eat, so you use it for fuel. Upera de Capri, this is like basically a fish pond. So is that going to be considered to be a principle, or is it going to be considered fruit? So you cut it down to use it for its fruit. You fish out the farm. So are we viewing it as land or fruits? So with the principle or the fruits. So some say Amrila Pere, the Amrila Carne. Some say we view it as fruits. Right. So therefore, if as Rashi explains, if it fell to her as an inheritance, the cutting down of the wood or the fish are fruits. And so therefore the land itself is the principle, meaning there's a pond or there's the land in which the trees are on. So some view it as fruits, and some say, no, everything is Karen. Everything there is the principle. Why? Because since the wood and the fish are going to be finished, you cut down the trees, the wood's gone. You fish out the fish from the pond, they're finished. So therefore you have to sell everything immediately and purchase real estate with it, and then you could eat the fruits. Call the Milsa, what's the principle? Gizo Machlif Pere, that if the trunk will be renewed, then we view it as fruits. If it'll grow again, we view it as fruits. If it'll replenish on its own. In Gizo Machlif, but if it doesn't replenish on its own, karna. We view it as the principal. And so therefore the fish don't replenish if you fish them out. And also the trees don't replenish if you cut them down. So let's say somebody steals Vlad Behemas Maluk. So a woman brought to the property the Nechse Maluk. She got an animal as an inheritance, and the animal gave birth. So you would think that that's the Peros. Somebody steals that offspring. Mishalim Tashume Kefal. Who do you pay the double amount to? You pay it to Leisha, to the wife, and not to the husband. Rashi says, at this point, they're of the opinion that the fruits, that the offspring are not considered fruits, but the current principal. And so therefore you have to purchase real estate with it, because we're concerned that maybe the mother will die, Rashi says, and then you'll be done with the principal. So therefore, the Gemara's assumption at this point is, why do you pay the double amount of the offspring to the mother, to the wife? Because we think that the mother of the animal is going to die, and so then you'll be left without your principal. So therefore, the offspring is also considered principal. The says this must not be like Rabbanan or like Hanaya. The Tanya, we learned Vlad behemas mulug, the offspring of an animal that she brought as mulug, goes to the Baal, goes to the husband. But the Vlad shifchas mulug. So first of all, that's a contradiction right there, because we had just said it goes to that Rabbi Abba, said in the name of Shai, said in the name of Rabbi Yanai, that it goes to the wife, and we just said, and according to Tanakama, it goes to the husband, and then it adds on Vlad shifchas mulug l'isha, but the offspring of the maid, a woman brings in as mulug, goes to the wife. Chananya ben Achi Yoshaya Omer Amar Asu Vlad shifchas mulug Vlad behemas mulug. He said, no, even the offspring of the shifcha goes to the husband. So we see it's not like Rabbi Yanai, because Rabbi Yanai said it goes to the wife. So Gemara says, I feel tema divrei hakol. No, you could even say that Rabbi Yanai is like everybody there. Peira takinu le rabbanan. The rabbi said the fruits, i.e., the direct offspring of the mother, that's what the rabbis instituted, but to go to the husband. But payre de payre, but the fruits of the fruits, in this case, the kefal money, the double amount which you have to pay from stealing the offspring, lo takinu rabbanan. The rabbis didn't institute, and so therefore that goes back to the wife. So Bish Shlomo Chananya. So the Gemara says, well, now let's analyze Chananya's position. It makes sense why he says. What does Hananya say? He says the offspring of the cow and also of the maid both go to the husband. So Hananya's position makes sense because he says, look, we're not concerned that the mother is going to die, and so therefore they both go to the husband, the offspring of the animal or the offspring of the mother. El Rabbanan, the Rabbanan's position needs understanding, because if we're concerned that she's going to die, if we're concerned that death has to be a concern, then I feel then even the offspring of the mulug of the animal should also go to the wife, because it's principle. So Gemara says, I feel should also not go to the husband. And if we're not concerned that death is going to happen, so then even the offspring of the maid should go to the husband. So the Gemara says, no, the Hananya will say we are concerned, or the Rabbanan will say we are concerned that the principal is going to die here. We are concerned that both the maid will die. So what's the reason it doesn't go back to? What's the reason why we still say, going back to the Gemara, he says, so we are concerned that they're going to die. Well, if that's the case, why does the offspring still go to the husband? Are we concerned that the mother is going to die? Shani behema deika ora. No, because even if the mother cow dies, there's still the skin left. So the principle is not destroyed. You still have the hide. And so therefore the principle is still there. Even though it's not the whole principle, it's part of the principle. And the law is like Hananya, that the offspring of the calf goes to the husband, the offspring of the maid stays with the wife. So Amar Hananya, Amar Rav Nachman Afagab Damar Shmuel Hananya, Moda Hananya. So Hananya is of the position. Hananya's position was that the offspring of the shifcha goes to the animal. So he says the law is like him. But nevertheless, he says, even though Shmuel says the law is like Hananya, Hananya would admit in Niskarsha that if the wife gets divorced, no sen estamim v'no taltan, she's allowed to pay, she can force a sale of the shifcha's offspring and take it. Why? Because the shifcha's offspring is considered to be shevach beis aviyah. It's like a family heirloom, and so she could force her husband to give it back to her family. Amar Rava, Amar Nachman, Nechnisa lo eiz l'chalva, v'rachel l'gizasa. Let's say she brought in a goat to milk it and a lamb to shear it, v'tana goas l'beitzasa, and a hen for its eggs, v'dekel peirosav, palm tree for its fruit. Ochel v'hol echad sheticha akarim. Then under those circumstances, we say that she can continue to eat it and consume it until the principle is finished. With respect, Rashi says the guy behema ika ora, because by an animal there's the hide. So there's still principle there, meaning to say we view it as something that by consuming it you're not going to deplete the principle, and so therefore you don't have to sell it and get the real estate, because by the hen there are feathers, and by the palm tree you have its wood. So therefore there's always some principle there. But Rav Nachman says, I like glima. If you let's say she brings in a garment that's also considered to have fruits, and so therefore you don't have to sell it, because he can wear it until it disintegrates, because it's never until it gets worn out, because there's still a principle there. Come on, Kiaitana the Tanya. It's like the following source. It says, "Melach v'achol hareza peros." That if you have like a salt quarry, or you have a place where there's like a sand ditch, all these places, even though you keep consuming them, there's still a little bit of the principle left. Let's say you have, a sulfur pit, or if you have a hole that you dig out something, there's a little bit of land there. Rameir says we view it as a principle, and you have to sell it right away and use it to buy land, because the amount that would remain from having used that is so minuscule. So it's not like anything that's left over. Whereas the Chachamim say no, there's still something left. As long as you still have something left, it's still considered like it's there. Rabbi Shimon says, "Malcolm sheyafa kocha." So the Gemara says, "What's the difference between Rabbi Shimon and the Tanna Kama? Is Rabbi Shimon saying the same thing?" Because the Rabbi Shimon is saying basically that if it's still attached to the ground, it belongs to him when they enter the marriage. So and when it's detached from the ground, it's hers. So what's the difference between Rabbi Shimon and the Chacham and the Tanna Kama? They're the same thing. So the Gemara says, I'll tell you what the difference is. What's different? The difference is with respect to the stuff that's attached when they're leaving. Rabbi Shimon says it belongs to her, and the Chacham, the Tanna Kama, didn't say anything. And so it must be that the Chacham say that belongs to him, that he gets that on the way out. It's a chiddush. That's what the dispute is. Says the Mishnah, Nefel avadim v'shvachos zikanim. Let's say if she inherited, the wife got slaves or maids that are old. She has to sell them. and purchase principal and purchase real estate, because otherwise the principal would be depleted. Shpag says, she doesn't have to sell them because these are family heirlooms, they're identified with her family. Let's say she got olive trees or grapevines that are sikanim, that are old. Again, they're going to die. So she sells them and purchases the real estate, and he eats the fruits. Rabbi Yehuda says, well, Timkor, again, you don't sell them because these are considered to be family heirlooms. Amarav Kahana Amarav Machokas Shenafu Besada Shalah. So Rav Kahana says in the name of Rav that this dispute about the grapes and the olives that the Tanakama says that they have to sell them and purchase the real estate with them so they can eat the fruits. And Rabbi Yehuda says you don't have to sell it. That's where it fell into her field, Besada Shalah. She has a field associated with it. Well, Besada Sheina Shalah, let's say she got these grapevines and it wasn't in her field, then Divrei Akol Timkor, then everyone's in the position that Divrei Akol Timkor, everyone's in the position that you sell it and use the principal, because the principal for sure be destroyed. She doesn't own the land that the grapevines are on. Maska for Rav Yosef. What about the avadim shvachos? The fields, the slaves and the shvachos, they're like the chisada sheina shaladami. It's like a field that doesn't belong to her. And yet we still see that there's a dispute about it, even though there's no field on it, and they're still arguing there. Rashbag says you don't sell it because they're shevach be'savia, and the Tanakama says you sell them, even though there's no field there. So this is the dispute. They're disputing about it in the case where the grapevines, she got the grapevines, but it wasn't on her field. That's where there's a dispute. But if it was her field, everybody says you don't sell it because of the fact that it's a shevach be'savia, because it's a family property associated with it. And so therefore, under those circumstances, everybody would say you wouldn't sell it. I will stop here, and God willing, we'll repeat this at 8 and then again at noon.